here, so I apologize for all of us, or some of us running in at the last minute. We were lucky enough to get a quick tour of the community center building. So we are quick running in from that. We have a few of our administrative teams still following. So are we go ahead right now and let them stream in? Okay. We're gonna go ahead and call to order the Caledonia Community Schools Board of Education meeting for June 19th. If you could all please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you again. For those of you who are dads or take that role, happy belated Father's Day to all of you. We appreciate you being here on this very lovely, warm summer evening. If you are here for public comment, we ask that you do fill out one of these cards. It does ask for your contact information so that we can follow up with you. There are rules to public speaking on the back. We do ask that any comments are directed to the full board. We do ask that you please try to stay within that 3-minute time limit that we have allowed. I do realize that there's times when you get to talking and you don't go as fast or you go slower than you think, but if you're gonna go over and you're wrapping up, you know, we don't have intentions of trying to stop you, but we do ask that you please try to honor that time frame. At this point in time, could I please have roll call?
Martin Garcia. Here. Randall.
Here.
Esich. Here. Morris.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Sadu.
Here.
White.
Here. Just as a reminder too, I know that we're working through this whole microphone situation. The microphones in the room do pick up the noise, but please, to help those that are in the room here, if you could remember to use your microphone, especially if your voice is not carrying as well. Too, if you are up for public speaking, we do ask that hopefully you'll be able to hear yourself in the microphone so that it will pick up for the recording. At this point in time, we're going to move on to 4, which is our public budget hearing. 4A is the 2022-23 final budget amendments.
So, is this on? Yeah. Okay. Do you have the presentation?
You ready for it?
Yes. So it's that time where we're looking at finishing one fiscal year, our 22-23 fiscal year. So we're going to look at our June budget amendments, and then we're also going to be looking at our proposed budget for next year, 23-24. So in looking at finishing up this year, we're looking to end the year with 71.1 million in revenues and 71.1 million in expenses, just about a flat. Looking at putting just over 2,000 into our fund balance. That would leave our fund balance at just over 9 million or 12.7% of expenditures. This will be also on our website and linked. The budget resolution is linked on this slide as well. There are a couple things I wanted to note about this. So I know this is going to be hard to read, but this will also be posted on our website. This is the document that looks at all of our budget, and it's our budget comparison. So the first column is our final audited numbers from last fiscal year, 21-22. Then it has our adopted budget we started this year with in that first grade column, and that was back in June of 2022. Then we had our February budget amendment, which is in that third column. Then you slide over and into the third grade column is our June budget amendments that we're looking at right now. And then we're also going to be looking at that final grade column, which is our proposed budget for 23-24. And I wanted to bring up this to kind of highlight to you. We did discuss this in our finance board committee meeting, but if you'll notice in our February budget that we're currently working under, and then looking at our June budget, you will notice like a $3 million variance in both the revenues and the expenditure side. So the bulk of that is with that MIPSR's retirement one-time payment, which goes into our revenues, and then we have to also record it to go out for expenditures. But that was an impact that hit both sides. So just wanted to make sure I highlighted that to you. And then that goes away again in 23-24. And then at the bottom, we've also, as part of our, sorry, I'm out of breath from the from the running. So part of our goal for the board is with our fund balance policy to try to maintain a 13% fund balance, as well as transfer anywhere from 0.5% up to 5% of our expenditures each year to go into our public improvement fund, to make sure we have those things built in for roof replacements or fixes, boilers that break. So this year we're looking at transferring $550,000, which is 0.7% of expenditures. And thankfully, I put this in the board memo. Just within the last couple weeks, we got verification that we can use a special grant, which was Section 31AA. It was specific for mental health, and we can use it to offset expenditures. So that was a huge bonus for us, because then we can offset general fund expenditures with nurses and counselors and student support specialists that aren't being funded with current grant funds of another source. So that truly was over a $500 million, 500,000, $500,000, just over $500,000, 500,000 that is benefiting our general fund balance. So that was great. And then that is not in 23-24. So those were a couple things I wanted to highlight for June. And then focusing then on the 23-24 proposed budget. Again, here are our key assumptions. We're looking at flat enrollment right now. We're looking at using the governor's proposed per pupil increase of $458. Again, on a positive for us, we're no longer on a 2X formula. All districts are funded the same, so that we'll get the full funding. Looking to, so whatever we end up carrying over from this year from ESSER funds, we'll be able to then finish up next year. In 23-24 is the last year of ESSER. We also have included in here contractual steps for all groups, 4% increase for the insurance costs, 18% for fuel and repair parts, increase for technology replacements. And as you know, we did some transitions for next year, and we did transition some of our ESSER positions. What that did is enabled us to not have such a large deficit next year. So in this slide, we're looking at next year revenues of $68 million and expenditures of $69.8 million. So we are looking at an estimated shortfall of $1.7 million. And if we end the year, as the previous slide showed, and we ended the next year with this, we'd be looking at 10.4% or a $7.2 million in fund balance. And all this will be on our website as well. So were there any questions? Yes.
Go ahead, Jason.
Do we have, is the state numbers finalized yet from the governors as far as the per pupil allowance, or is that still?
That is still pending.
Any additional questions? Oh, go ahead.
And with this, so our budget is, part of our public hearing is, in the resolution you'll see here, it's based on receiving 18 mills for our operating revenue and 7 mills being levied for our debt revenue, or to offset our debt payments.
Additional questions, Mr. Reeves? All right, we're good with that one. Thank you. On to, do you have more to follow? Anything more for you? You're all good? Okay. All right, then we are going to move forward with our consent agenda. We have the May 15, 2023 minutes, May 15, 2023 special meeting minutes, the June 2023 personnel report, May 2023 payables, and the MHSAA resolution for 23-24.
I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
May I have a second? Second. Are there any questions, clarifications? No? All right, could I please have roll call on that?
Berber Garcia,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 6 reports and information. 6A is a bond update. We have PMC Christian Tower Pinkster. Mr. Wells.
Good evening and thank you. Great to see those board members are able to make the tour. Yes, it's hot in dusty out there, but great progress with the athletic complex going forward. So tonight, one of the things we wanted to talk through with the Board of Education is based on the successful passage of the 2023 bond, there's a design consideration for the new Dutton. So if you go back in time, there was a 60,000 square foot facility. We know that escalation costs from 2019, 2020, especially with steel, concrete, asphalt, went up significantly. We're also seeing a little bit of cooling off in the marketplace, which is going to be advantageous, I think, for the district here to look at some different design considerations going forward. So tonight, we're not looking for an approval, but more of a thumbs up, thumbs down as we go into the design. Wrapping up the design process, so we're about 75% done with construction documents. We did review this with the finance committee, and again, we thought it'd be more important to bring it to the whole board. I'll also just show the progress to the community of the great things that are happening here with the Dutton Elementary. So the next slide, again, is just kind of a recap, about $40.4 million for Dutton, and that does include the development of 25 acres. You'll see that here in subsequent slides with multiple entrances onto the site, separated parent loop drop-offs, parking for staff, visitors, et cetera, playgrounds, et cetera. And then the other $20.6 million is the other things that were part of the 10-year capital plan, that ultimately the goal of the district is to help accomplish those here in the next 5 to 6 years going forward. On the next slide, what we have is, again, we looked at different variations with the board over the years, was maybe we should reduce it to 45,000 square feet. I think you made the right choice of not sacrificing academic space, but really focusing on keeping that square footage. We did have a chance actually to go back through and update the estimates of a precast concrete building versus a traditional masonry brick roof system, and we'll talk about that here a little bit. The costs that are included in that are allowances for the new water main service. So again, that's kind of a TBD, but we have been meeting, I believe, for the last year and a half with the township to really narrow down some of those definitives. We do have, again, those dual access points. We also have a robust furniture, fixtures, equipment that's FF&E, and also technology versus trying to relocate something from the existing Dutton that probably has been past its useful life prime. Still cost center refinement. So again, we would be looking, again, based on today's kind of insight, is going out for bid for the site work and the foundations this fall. Breaking ground here probably the next 4 months, and then really just accelerating the rest of that bid package going forward. And again, wetland mitigation. So there are some wetlands on the site. We've done an ALTA survey, which has delineated those wetlands. We're trying to minimize that as much as possible. We think we're under the appropriate acreage or size to help not have to replace that. But again, that'll be through the submittal process through the Department of Natural Resources and Eagle. So next slide. So yes, this is the site plan. So roughly 25 acres of the 50 acres. You've got 76 streets across north-south, Patterson, kind of on the far left going up and down. Again, you can see multiple entrances off the site. There's a existing wetland pond that'll kind of be in the middle of the drop-off, so it's an architectural feature as we kind of look at trying not to relocate that here on the site. But you can see it's really a three-prong wing, academic wing. There'll be, and we'll have a next slide will show them a little bit more detail, but again, just the fact that we do have the two entrances, we heard that very much from the community inputs, also from the board about really trying to create that separation, as we know traffic is sometimes an issue here in the Caledonia area. So next slide. There's really more just a blow up of that. So you've got your academic wings kind of to the upper left, off to the mid-center, and off to the right. Again, not saying you need it in the next 20 or 50 years, but you could actually expand past these if you had to add on 2, 4, 6, 8 classrooms. So some of that 50-year planning that went into the plan itself. There's a commons area kind of in the middle where those three wings meet. There's dedicated special education kind of in the core of the building. And then on the left-hand side, kind of working your way through the secured vestibules in the office is a full-size gymnasium, a separate cafeteria, food services, et cetera. So really keeping true to the 60,000 square feet plan. Again, this would accommodate roughly 600 students. Again, looking not just current enrollment, but also potential future enrollment going forward. And still maintaining the same class sizes going forward. So next slide. So you were on site. If you're on site today, you saw the Calplex. So this is the precast solution as originally proposed for Dutton. Again, not a lot you can do with precast. You can stain it, you can put some patterning in it, but it's precast going forward. So this is just a shot of the gymnasium with the offices and the one classroom wing to the left there going forward. Next slide is the same view, but utilizing a brick masonry combination. Again, we're still working on the patterning, but just something that kind of mimics the other elementary schools that are here in the Caledonia Community Schools. You see a center entrance, a secured vestibule with the classroom wings to the left. This is obviously a view from the parent drop-off going forward. Next slide. Again, one of the classroom wings, just kind of keeping the same mimics of introducing a lot of natural light, again, higher window sills, and again, just different patterns to make sure it looks more like an elementary school and not a distribution center, if you will. So, next slide. Some ideas and thoughts on canopies. Again, just some ideas of creating some ideation of entrances. Again, this was the precast option on the next slide. Again, kind of taking a look a little bit different with, again, maybe some introductions, some faux wood, something that's low maintenance, but gives you that feel of here's the entrance to the facility going forward. And in the background, you can kind of see the higher bay space area. This would be that center point of the building where the classrooms meet, bringing a lot of natural light and a lot of great spaces from the academics going forward. Next slide. So again, sorry for the smallness, but in your board packet, I know with the finance committee, there's a 24-page document that Chrisman put together. So we literally went through all 16 divisions and said, what's more cost effective? Should it be a precast structure or should it be more of a masonry and brick? And what we found is about $600,000 more cost effective to actually go brick and masonry. The roofing planking system will still be precast, just because structural steel is still difficult from a timing standpoint to get. But we're not sacrificing any square footage. We are getting a little bit more space in the classroom spaces with precast planking going forward. So again, we were kind of surprised. Concrete has actually been up about 27.5% in the last year. The cost of getting aggregate obviously is driving some of that cost up. More importantly, a lot of the other components of the building have actually come down in the last year from that. So I think that was one of the questions board members like, what if we just bid this thing out, let's say, in the fall of 23. Well, that's why we're here today, is to say I think we can do that and still keep it within the budget that's been approved as part of the bond. Next slide. So again, this is just that side-by-side comparison. First column, the 33.3 million. Again, these are programmatic costs. You still have escalation contingency above and beyond that kind of rounds out to the 40. But on the right-hand side, you can see it's about $32.7 million. So again, more cost-effective to go with that precast panel system. So on the next slide, just kind of shows you where we're at. So one of the things that we would like to do is bring back the actual CD estimate prior to going out to bid, just to have a little more gut check to make sure we're on schedule. So really in June through mid-August, we're going to do site planning and design. So again, we've met with the township a couple of times. We really want to finalize those. So about a 3 to 4 month time frame. We're not reinventing the design. So again, we've had a lot of great principal meetings, user group meetings, administrative meetings. The building's placed on the site. I think we got the site logistics nailed down. It's really just wrapping up into a bidding document, which we mentioned. We'd really like to take that out here in August, September, October. Come back to the board with kind of a phase sequence like we did for the previous board packets for the athletic complex. And then ultimately, bid this thing and build it really by the summer of 25. And then turn it back over to the district. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Ms. Dr. Martin, the board, for any questions.
Tim?
So we have contingents in the plan, so we're not running into an inflationary problem down the road again, from what I remember.
That's correct.
Can you elaborate on it?
That's a great point. So give you an example, roofing. So roofing would probably be a bid package you bring out in the spring, summer. Once you kind of finalize the layouts of the facility, you get the actual square footages. We do have a contingency. That was actually something that was asked by the Department of Treasury to make sure something like this doesn't happen. And what we're seeing across a lot of districts was things that were planned in 2020, 21. They're coming up to some unique challenges of how to get that scope of work done. So again, part of that 40.4 million is the escalation piece. And again, if it's not used, it just comes back to the district. So it's not Chrisman's or Tower Pinkster's ours, it's the district's money. We would do update the finance committee on a regular basis and where we're at with those tracking mechanisms. So appreciate that.
Okay, and I may, a couple more questions. The parking allocation, we have enough for teachers and staff and amount of guests. But what about special events that may be held? How would we treat parking with an overflow?
So I could work with the designers. So that's one of those site plan logistics, like, what is the exact count? How much wetland mitigation? That's one of those TBDs where you could probably pick up an extra 50 to 60 spots. I couldn't count it on that site plan, but we could be able to get back through Dr. Barton, kind of answer those questions of like how many parking spots are there. Because we understand it's like parent-teacher conferences, there's plays. I just, have a kid who's in high school, so it kind of attendance goes down a little bit, but I remember those elementary days, you're parking on the grass across the field and walking. So again, we'll work with the architect to make sure we get that response back, so.
And we had talked about in committee about having a sign put up on 76 and Patterson to show the community where they're the new Dutton Elementary School?
Correct, that's actually in play. It's gonna look a lot like the athletic complex sign, so it'll be future home of Dutton Elementary. And talking to Chrisman Construction, they're actually looking at mobilizing here in the next few months. We'd probably wanna talk to the board about maybe on a September groundbreaking like we did for the athletic complex. But yeah, we're looking to move actually dirt here this fall, and then just keep rolling for the next 22 months and get it done, so,
Thank you.
you bet.
Other questions, Jason?
Less of a question and just more of I'm super excited to see that masonry is now an affordable option to bring this back to like all of the rest of the elementaries as far as the look and feel goes. So I mean, if you're looking for a thumbs up, thumbs down, I'm a thumbs up for the masonry option because I think, you know, again, aesthetically it just brings it in line with the rest of the buildings that we have. So other than the teal, I'm still sad about the teal, but I'm kidding, no teal.
The teal is definitely a problem. I'm not really kidding about that, but yeah, no teal on the Dutton
Got
building,
it.
please. But yeah, no, I would agree with Jason. The masonry look certainly is a much better look and a much better feel for what we would hope to see, I would think. So, does anybody else have any input to give?
My only question about that is that would you have them bid it both ways?
Actually wouldn't, because right now we're at a spot where when you wrap up the construction documents, it's really detailed for block masonry. So one of the things you might have seen if you've had a chance is over at the athletic complex, if it's precast, you literally have to like point where you want that outlet for data drops, voice communication. So you have a little more flexibility with the block wall. So again, it's just, I'll call it the structure doesn't go up as quickly, but you have a lot more flexibility in the interiors, if you will. So that's why we're kind of here tonight of like a thumbs up, thumb down to really proceed with wrapping up the construction documents here and going to brick masonry type approach, so.
But your calculations show that it's gonna be a cost savings for us.
Yeah, like I said, we spent probably 3 weeks with the Chrisman and Tower Pinkster team and Mr. Hess and the district administrators really to hone in. And again, the major change is gonna be the exterior structure. That was the biggest delta, looking at, so.
Yeah, looks great. It'd be nice to have it be consistent.
Yes.
Other questions, comments, feedback? Tim?
Just one more comment on between the two entryways. I do like the one on page 9. It's a little more modern, it's different. And I think I like the angles. It kind of fits what the community center is turning into in terms of the design, look and feel.
Great input.
And just on that, do you know, I mean, when are we looking to approve sort of a design, or I don't know if we would have to approve a design or where that would come, like when does the entryway design come into play?
Yeah, so we'll obviously work with the administration team kind of based on the feedback we heard today when we do that last presentation before. You'd have probably more interiors, showing kind of what the classrooms look like, the gathering spaces in the middle, a little more robust presentation like we did for the athletic complex. That's when you really sign off on, you know, hey, this is the right direction. Again, we may look at different alternates for the canopy, like without the canopy, with the canopy, extended canopy, shortened canopy. So those are some of those approaches that, depending where the bids come in, let's say in the spring for those particular components, we can flex and really keep in alignment with the budget and the schedule. But I would say probably next several months, we'd have that presentation package ready, and then you say go, and then we go out for bids, and we'll be back in about 6 weeks with hopefully bids and keep moving, so.
So, I mean, the canopy itself, right, I mean, it's not being set in stone, so to speak.
Right now, it's
Right
just
now.
a design element
Okay.
that we're trying to figure out, like, okay, it looks good, and again, we priced it, so that the good news, it's within an indicated price, we're just trying to figure out as, something else happens, you know, you hear recession, you hear cost escalation, you hear like things are kind of getting back to normal from a trade standpoint. Our biggest thing right now is just electrical components, so luckily the switchgear and the generator here for the athletic complex. We're just talking to Rockford on that project, and they said if you ordered it today, it would be here November of 25. Like, it's like a year and a half, so anyways, we're lucky to have what we have, so.
It's crazy. Right, anything to
So on
Jason's
that,
start?
are we gonna have the challenge for that for Dutton?
No, the good news is, we've kind of already sized the generator based on the 60,000 square feet, the switchgear with that. That's probably one of the first things they'll go with the early bid packages. Plus the size of that switchgear is not as large as, let's say, middle school or high school. So again, that's where we're just tracking it kind of month to month where we're at with availability of materials. Roofing has actually come down a lot in terms of availability. Again, structural steel, the open bar joists are still an issue. That's why we're going with the concrete plank versus the open web joists. But other than that, like, those are probably the larger lead items that we're just tracking with the Crispin team.
Anything, Jennifer?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
And thank you again for arranging the tour today.
No problem. Sorry about the dusty shoes.
It was great. I was pleased to see how cool it was in the building, because I was feeling bad for all of them out there in the heat, but it's pretty nice in there.
It is. It's very nice, so.
Thank you. All right, and we're going to move on to 6B, which is 98B benchmark data reporting with Dr. Diaz and Dr. Sauer.
Thank you for inviting us up to talk about data. Like, who does not want to talk about data, right? So especially in June. And so we're here to update Dr. Diaz and I basically to come back to a presentation that we did back in the fall. We are obligated per legislative requirements to review this twice per year. And it's formally, we call it 98B, but it's essentially just a student achievement update. And so we'll take you through a couple of slides. You may recognize them based on the previous presentation, but there is obviously new data incorporated too. So just as a point of context, 98B is a state requirement. It comes to us via the wonderful outcomes of COVID, but essentially what it allows us to do is to share what we're doing from a data standpoint with ELA and math. Those are the two subject areas that the legislative requirements put in place for us, and we have certain data sets that we could use all 3 times per year. So we could have chosen from any of those four at the bottom there. We chose to go move forward with NWEA. And so for the purposes of the next several slides, you'll see data indications representative from NWEA. That's an assessment we've had in place here for approximately 12 years. And so we are pretty well versed in how to utilize that assessment. I can't say that's going to be the case in the future necessarily, but for now, that's what we have. And so as you look over what NWEA is, essentially it's an adaptive test. And so a student answers a question and then the test will adapt to the answer from the student. And again, this is per ELA and math. That's what we'll be referencing in terms of the data. And it is for grades K through 8. So the high school is not a part of what we are obligated to show. I'll turn it over here to Dr. Diaz and let her take us through the next couple of slides.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Trauber. In the fall of 2022, after we had a year with some more typical instructional consistency, as we all know, there were some bumps in the road there. But we started seeing a rebound in our assessment scores, particularly in math in the fall of 2020, excuse me, in 2022, back to some of those pre-COVID levels in 2020. And although our trend was moving upward, we definitely had not seen that return to levels prior to COVID in our ELA scores. So in 2022-2023, we had some continued investment in some very targeted strategies across the district, so that we had some very targeted professional development around Tier 1, which is just our primary foundational instructional materials, making sure that we had consistent materials across the grades and also solid professional development so that our teachers were teaching the curriculum with efficacy. We also provided the intervention support for students not yet meeting grade level standards through the ESSER funding. We focused on our strategic plan priorities tied to the teaching and learning and making sure that we were ensuring learning outcomes for all students and not just some students. And we also implemented some ongoing data meetings to really dig in to what we call our early warning indicators, or EWIMs, which is looking at ABC data, attendance, behavior, and course performance. And even though 98B does not require us to present the high school data, we do a benchmark assessment with our high school students, and we do look at that data in the same way or a similar way as we look at the NWA data to see where we have students meeting standards, still having room for growth to help guide instructional strategies and processes. So as we move forward, math, which is exciting to see, a continued upward trend. Historically, mathematics is not particularly the strong suit of most students. I don't know how many times in my educational career I have heard a student say, well, my mom was really terrible at math, so I'm always gonna be terrible at math, or vice versa, my dad was terrible at math. So that tends to be a spot where we see a bigger block, but we have seen some real positive outcomes in terms of math data across our district, particularly at K-8. And as we look at reading, we know that reading is much more conceptual than linear, where math builds upon itself. English language arts is much more difficult as a language, and just the way that we teach it is more conceptually based than it is linear based. You don't have to know how to spell the word ball to be able to spell the word fast. So it's just a different kind of learning there. So we did between 2016 and 2020 see an upward trajectory across the district. And then in 2021, with less instructional time related to COVID, as well as absences related to COVID, we definitely saw a dip there. But as we've moved from 2021 to 2023, again, increasing that instructional time, the consistency, the intervention system, we've started to see some real positive impact on our progress moving forward. You want to kick us off here?
Absolutely.
All right.
And so in the next several slides, you'll see some of the scores that we briefly introduced a moment ago. And so this data set goes back to 2017, as you can see, reading on the left and then math on the right. And you see lots of different scores from the 17 until 22, but overall you see a growth of 6% in reading. In math, you see a growth of 7%, and that's indicative of where the students were in the fall. And so when we dissect that data from NWEA, we look for the students that are performing at the 41st percentile and above, because that's where NWEA suggests the students would need to be in order to be at the level of proficiency, or being able to continue to trend in the right direction, if you will. And then in the winter, again, these are benchmark assessments, so we take them in the fall, winter, and then the spring as well. And so you look at reading from 18 until 23, as well as math, 18 to 23, lots of scores populated in between. And you see in reading, we're not quite where we were yet, going back to just ahead of COVID, whereas in math, as Dr. Diaz referenced, we are seeing an upward trend in that block of scoring. And we would chalk that up to right about the time of 1920 is when we adopted a brand new math curriculum. And we did that K through 8, so it's the same language, same concepts that are being taught, through the use of that Tier 1 curriculum. And you see a lot of consistency there. And that's why we believe, or one of the reasons why we believe that we have continued to see that upward trend, that in addition to the targeted PD that we've been able to put in place for our teachers. And then lastly, of course, is that three-legged chair, fall, winter, and now spring data set going back to 2018 in both math and reading, going all the way to 23. And you see some good data sets as it relates to the end of the year totals. Growth of 7% in reading and growth of 9% in math. And again, that's something that we are proud about, we're excited to see, but we know that there's still some room to be made, because certainly when you talk about at the end there, reading 23 of 80% or math of 23 84%, that suggests that there are some students there we still need to make sure that we target, scaffold, provide the optimal experiences from an educational institution so that we can put them in a good place when they continue their pursuits as a student. And I'll go ahead and turn it over here to Dr. Diaz for the next several slides.
Thank you. So one of the things that 98B does require of us is to not only look at those students that are meeting benchmark with that 41st percentile as our cut point, it also mandates us to break the data down by subgroup so that we're looking at males versus females, we're looking at our ethnic breakdowns, we're looking at our free and reduced lunch students, and we're looking at how the experiences may vary across those groups. And so this next set of data really kind of takes that proficiency level of the 41st percentile and then it breaks it down by subgroup. So if we start with the free and reduced lunch grouping, we did not include the winter score, just to be honest with you, because it got too small and too crowded on the slide. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of had the fall to spring in terms of our students. So reading is on the left-hand side, math is on the right. So from fall of 2022 in reading, our students who qualify for free or reduced lunch were scoring at the 41st percentile at a rate of 64%. So 64% of those students were achieving the benchmark. In the spring, we had an increase of 2% so that 66% of our students were meeting that 41st percentile benchmark. In mathematics, you can see a really nice jump, 61% of our students meeting benchmark in the fall to 70% meeting benchmark in the spring. So I won't read all of those to you, but we do have some fluctuations as we look at our special education population. We see a decrease in percentages meeting those spring benchmarks of 2%, as well as our English learners where we have a significant reduction in the reading proficiencies at spring, but a huge jump in mathematics from fall to spring. So again, thinking about an English learner and that by the nature of that grouping, they are learning the English language. So we definitely want to look at the reason why we're seeing some of those changes for our English learners that are going in the wrong direction from what we're working towards. But we do also want to keep note that we have a significant change in mathematics. So there are some things that are working and some things that we're missing. And so we'll be focused kind of on peeling back those layers for our special education population as well as our English learner population, specifically in English language arts. When we look at our female versus male, we have some strong scores and some very consistent scores. As I probably have mentioned previously, we tend to think that our male students normally outperform our female students in math and that our female students outperform their male counterparts in reading. And although there is some truth to that, there isn't the huge gap that there used to be. So we definitely are bringing students together and moving them forward. So we have 80% of our females meeting those benchmarks for reading in the fall, jumping up to 81% in the spring. But when you look at math, 75% to 82%, that's a nice jump. And for our males, we had a nice jump both in reading and in math. So each increase is a larger number of students that are meeting that 41st percentile benchmark. Breaking down into Asian, Black, and Hispanic, again, we have some ups and downs. One of the things that we're looking at is are our Asian students also our English learner students? So is there a connection there between the students that are struggling in English language arts in terms of it being a second language issue? Or is there something else that's happening with the experience that our Asian students are having in our district? So those are some of the questions that we're asking ourselves as we kind of dig into the data and plan for next year and how we're going to support students. So some, again, really strong changes in mathematics for both our Black and Hispanic students of 11% and 14%. So that is something that is really nice to see as we continue to implement the new curriculum in math and some of the additional intervention supports as well. And then we have our white students and then unknown, excuse me. So what that means is that either the student's family identified their student as a multiracial student, or they identified them as unknown or undisclosed. So those students make up the multi-unknown category. So for our white students, we have increases in both math and ELA. And then for our multiracial students, we have a slight decrease in reading and an increase in math. So again, just some of the questions that we're asking ourselves is why? What is it that is impacting the different experiences that our students are having across the subject areas? And why is there a significant difference between some of our subgroups of students and the experience that they're having? And with that, Dr. Trauber.
And again, just to reference what Dr. Diaz was mentioning earlier, you see the dips primarily in the way of reading. And so when we talk about reading, we're talking about that different learning, right? Especially as it relates to ELL, ESL, or MLL, depending on how you frame that grouping of students. They are taking on the active interpretation of different sounds, letters, and representations, and that obviously takes a much more significant level of thinking with reading than it does with math, which is much more universal. As it relates to this next data set, we're looking at benchmark data from the same standpoint with NWEA, but we're looking at it in terms of growth. And so you see there that when we look at fresh data, 22-23, fall to winter, 53% at the top there, and then with math, 50%. As it relates to the spring, fall to spring reading, 64%, and then also fall to spring math, 64%. So lots of similar data points when you look at both reading and math, which we like to see the similarities there. Obviously, we want to see a continued upward trend as the years wear on. And this next data set, so we've taken you to the landing spot of the 41st percentile. Now we're increasing the heat, so to speak, a little bit. Obviously outside, increasing the heat, and then inside too, with the 60th percentile. And so I'll let Dr. Diaz speak to this.
So one of the things that we wanted to do, like with the growth slide that Dr. Trauber was talking with you about, no matter where our students are, whether they have hit benchmark or whether they are above benchmark or below benchmark, we want to see a particular amount of growth for those students. For those below benchmark, of course, we're hoping they'll make more than a typical year's growth in a year's time so that they can start catching up. For our other students, we want to make sure they're continuing to grow, whether they're hitting benchmark or significantly above. So it was exciting to see that we had such a jump in the number of students that met their growth target between fall and spring compared to fall to winter. So this is another way for us to look at the data to say, okay, the 41st percentile is benchmark. That's where kind of our goal line. But what if we looked at the number of students who were achieving beyond that and above that? And so we pulled the 60th percentile to see how many of our students are not only hitting benchmark, but even significantly above that. And so when we look in this all students category from 17-18 over time, we have some changes. Obviously, we had no spring results in 2020. That's why there's no data there and no change recorded. And then if you move into the next slide with the most recent, we're continuing to see some upward trend movement in the number of students that are not only meeting benchmark, but significantly above. So just keeping in mind the data from lots of different perspectives and making sure that we're asking enough questions and hopefully the right questions to keep us moving in that positive direction. What questions might you have? Jason?
So
love all of the data. So thank you for putting it together. I'm sure that took an incredible amount of time, so appreciate that. So my questions, I guess, are what do we do now? Like, what do we do with this? It looks like we maybe have some room for improvement in the reading side, as some of the numbers dip a little bit. So I guess where do we go from looking at this now, and how do we address some of those?
Where do you wanna take it?
Interesting question, Jason. So I would say this, that we wanna make sure to get the right people at the table to have that type of conversation. Part of it obviously is what we can do here at Central Admin and dissect the data and begin to ask the right questions, right? But we also know that teachers are a valuable part of that conversation. And so as we look to next year and beyond, we are very excited about what we think we're going to be doing. And what I mean by that is we'll be moving toward PLCs or professional learning communities. And so getting teachers at the table with admin, dissecting the data is something we'll be doing not only here in this space, but then also at each of the buildings too, to make sure that we are really targeting those students that are not learning in the way that we want them to, or at the rate that we want them to. And so PLCs is something that you'll begin hearing much more about. And that really is a framework by which we ask for specific questions in the way of what do we want students to learn, what is the data set saying about their learning, what are we doing for those students that aren't learning in the way that we want them to, and what are those students doing, or how are they learning at a rate higher than what we are asking them to perform at. So those are the 4 basic questions that we'll be getting around the table and asking for our students at each of the different sites.
And another tough follow-up for you. What, if anything, does this say about like the CKLA curriculum that we adopted 4 or 5 years ago? It was right around the time frame of this data set. So is there anything we can glean from this data set on maybe the effectiveness of the curriculum or where we would go with that?
So since this is an elementary question, I'll go
I was
ahead
gonna say, that's why I didn't step over there.
I'll go ahead and address it. That's a really good question too. So I will say that I was definitely one of the proponents of CKLA when we brought it on board, because it incorporated or infused a lot of the latest research at that point. And the research in reading, which is CKLA, I would say that the learning or the research hasn't necessarily suggested much different things from when we were introduced to it back then to now. I would say, however, that there's probably some different ways in which we would learn from, or ways that we've been introduced to learning in the way from then until now. And so it's a really good question. We'll begin asking that question in more depth in the next couple of years as we look at the curriculum cycle. I would dare say that we'll probably, this is my bias or my opinion, my interpretation at this point, but we'll probably be looking at a different type of program to help us get over the edge. Because you see from that data set that we are typically performing at a pretty standard rate. We're not necessarily seeing the jump or the growth that we want to see. We're seeing some, but just not necessarily the amount. And I can't say that we're not having the necessary PD, because I think we are. It's not necessarily that students aren't learning, they are. They're just not doing it in the way of putting everything together in the way that I would hope they would. Make sense?
Thanks.
Based on the timing of that, then when you said, well, based on the curriculum review cycle, that would put us at what point? I mean, how long, if we talk about it from a standpoint where you go, okay, we think maybe we need additional, or we need something different. Are we looking at that soon enough then, as opposed to, do you follow where I'm going with this, as opposed to putting it off an extra year, or whatever that looks like?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. I think that we are probably going to be capturing that conversation at the right time. And I say that because we, as one of the slides alluded to, putting more emphasis in terms of interventions and type of programming, just some different logistical aspects of how we pull students into interventions when we do that, the different types of programming, different just areas at which we're asking questions for the purpose of data analysis. So I think we're doing all those sorts of things at the right point. And I think in the next couple of years, we'll be able to intersect all the different conversations related to professional practice, data meetings, PLCs, to get us to the point of asking that question at the right time to say, are we doing what we can relative to our tier 1 curriculum? And we'll find out the answer.
Thank you. Additional questions, Tim?
So you had mentioned that the students K through 8 weren't meeting the expectation or the rate of growth. What is that rate of growth that we want to achieve in reading?
Even though that's kind of an elementary question, I'm gonna take that because ultimately we want all of our students to achieve the benchmark and above. So we look at what companies give us in terms of a cut point for a particular assessment that we're using, and we utilize that assessment over time so we can compare apples to apples. But ultimately, our goal is to have all of our students achieving at high levels, right? And so even when we have 84% of our students meeting 60%, so that's above and beyond the benchmark, that still leaves us with another group of students that are not meeting our benchmark. And so our focus has to be, what are we doing to make sure that those students are having a positive learning experience and ultimately then positive learning outcomes, and at the same time not losing sight of some of our students who are achieving above 60 percentile, maybe they're in the 80th percentile. So how do we make sure that we're meeting the needs of the students across the spectrum, from those that are still not yet getting all of the skills in place and those that are at a higher level? So ultimately, I think each district can kind of make their own decision about what their goal is. But I think for us, we want to see all of our students achieving at high levels.
Thank you.
Additional questions, comments? Thank you, great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we're gonna move on to 7, which is our discussion items. 7A is our bond authorization resolution with Mr. Breeze.
So we are looking tonight for the board to approve the 2 bond authorizing resolutions. We're looking at issuing our final series, Series 3 of our 2020 bond. These will be taxable bonds and it will go to finish the community center. And then we're also looking to issue the first series of our May 2023 voter approved bond. And that series is looking to be 40 million, and that's to start the Dutton Elementary project.
Are there any questions? Got that one, that was simple. All right, 7B, onto food service contract renewal meal prices.
Okay, so this is, we're entering into the final year that we can renew for our food service, and we have been working and partnering with Aramark. So looking for the board to approve this final year of the contract with Aramark. Also included in your board packet, there was a document that lists our prices. So we are looking to also not raise prices for our families for another year. We have a high fund balance in our food service fund due to when everyone was eating free, we were receiving the federal reimbursement rate for all students. So we have a high fund balance. And there is a policy in place that we're mandated to only keep 3 months worth of operating expenditures. So we've exceeded that, so we are working on a fund balance, excess fund balance spend down plan. As part of that, maintaining prices for our families will then work into the fund balance to pay for that, not increasing those prices. And also we're looking to have our reduced families not pay for their meals. And then that's attached as well to your board packet.
Jason?
So the fund balance that we have as we look to potentially have the final year of Aramark, is that fund balance, does that belong to the school or is that in conjunction with Aramark? So if we were to switch companies, for example, next year, would that fund balance go away if we switch companies?
No, good question. No, that fund balance, that belongs to the district. That's part of the district funds. We are in a contract, we have a fixed rate contract with Aramark, so however many breakfast meals we serve, they charge us a rate for breakfast, lunch, etc. So we just pay based on that fixed rate.
Additional questions?
Right, we're good with that one. On to C, school loan revolving fund.
So we have been a part of this fund. This is something that we have to do on an annual basis, is the board needs to approve this resolution. We are currently in the borrowing mode, so attached here is the resolution. We're estimating about $844,000 that we'll be borrowing in the 23-24 school year to make those biannual debt payments. So in the resolution, it lists what we'll be borrowing, the estimated interest, and then the balance sitting in that school loan revolving fund, which would be about $13.3 million.
Any questions for Mr. Reese? We're good, thank you. We're gonna move now to 7D, and Mr. Hess needed a break, so we've assigned Mr. Kingsbury to fill in along the way here. So we have our cafeteria table purchase.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, Mr. Hess is, in an area where it's very remote, uniquely for him today, so he couldn't participate in the meeting, but I'm happy to take over for him. As Mr. Vries just mentioned, we do have that high fund balance in our food service account, and we would like to purchase cafeteria tables with that, once approved by the board, if you choose to do so. We're looking at having the fold-up ones that seat students as opposed to having the round ones with the tables that break quite often, moving the chairs, and being a former elementary school principal, I spent many hours of my day stacking those chairs, folding up those tables. So we're looking at having a consistent product that we purchase district-wide. So if we need to take parts from one table that breaks, we can kind of fix some others. So looking at it strategically as we add these type of tables to our inventory. So we're looking at two buildings specifically. One would be Caledonia Elementary, $28,370, and Dutton Elementary, $45,504.80. So any questions with that? You can see the quote attached in the board agenda if you have that.
Just for the record, obviously, I think that we all read in the packet that this purchase for Dutton Elementary would be something that would transfer over to the new building.
Yes.
Just so there's nobody sitting there thinking concerned, what are they thinking, so.
We'll take them with us.
Okay, that has been thought out. Any additional comments, questions?
That was my comment.
We're on it. Okay, thank you.
All right.
We'll move forward to 7E, which is the high school learning commons furniture.
High School Learning Commons, formerly known as the Media Center. It is one of those areas that we planned in the bond to actually have new furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So this is a known expense we would have. Mr. Hess actually initially presented this to the board in April and has talked to both of our committees just to kind of give updates on that. So one of the goals is really having a flexible seating area, which we can move things around, put it together, and use that for a real multi-purpose area. So there's pictures of the furniture in there in your board packet, and we're asking the board to approve the purchase for $296,000 with the $5,000 contingency. So any questions on Media Center, or I should say Learning Commons furniture?
Tim?
Just a point for the community, these chairs and tables are very mobile and agile. They fold up, they stack. It truly is a great solution for the application that we're moving towards with the old community center.
No, thanks for adding that, Mr. Morris.
Anything else? No? All right, we're good there. We will move on to 7F, which is Emmons Lake Playground and Sensory Play Area.
Once again, this expenditure would be from the 2020 bond. Emmons Lake, so it's kind of hard to believe it's over 20 years old. That's the last time we've really done a lot of work in a lot of our playground areas. But one of the things that Emmons has is sensory programming for our students, and having an area for them that's not all students can use it, but dedicated with the focus on how to meet their needs in terms of play and having a positive experience outside in recess is one of the focus areas. So with the addition of this new playground equipment, there will be that spot for the sensory needs of our ASD students. So some of the things that we're looking at, we have a grant of $10,000 that's gonna be added to that, which is very helpful. And we also, and so the price is actually gonna be $267,884 from our bond fund. And we do have 2 other elementary schools we're looking at upgrading as well. Because as parents, we all know that a lot of our hard work and fundraising went to those playgrounds. And we spent those days putting those things up on the weekend. So I think it's a great choice for us to kind of alleviate some of the, I don't wanna say burdens, but allows our PTOs to put that money to use in different areas, so.
Well, and to truly have the focus on for our
Yes.
special needs and sensory programs, the
Yes.
handicap accessible playgrounds is just a great switch, so I appreciate the effort into that. Any questions for Mr. Kingsbury?
Yeah, I'm impressed with this equipment. It is surprisingly wild. And I mean, not wild in the way that it's just cool. It's equipment that I wish we had 10 years ago to meet the need of sensory students, but I think we hit it out of the park here with this, so thank you.
I promise to go be the first one to try it and give a detailed account of how it works.
Be careful of the knee.
Brittany, can I just ask, the thing at the end of the
Yes.
slides, is that like a pavilion, kind of, like a covered
Yes.
area?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's going to be a sail type pavilion canopy thing we talked about. So I know it's not as eloquent as Mr. Hess would say, but what in talking about it, one of the things, or what do we do in the wintertime when the snow comes down on it? So it's one of those tops that you take down during inclement weather and you put back up. But it looks really, really neat, and it has that multi-purpose thing for it too, so be purple, not teal, just wanna make sure of that, so.
Jason?
I mean, just with the illustrations and everything, are these things that we would put on a website or somewhere just to, this is what's coming, as far as for the community and other people? Or is this just hey, we'll wait until Emmons gets it, hopefully later this year? I'm just curious, I don't know.
I don't see why it's not something we'd put out there, as long as what we purchase is in stock and it comes to it. They don't try to do the switch on us, but yeah, I think that would be nice to highlight some of the things
Yeah.
that we're doing for the community. And if somebody could take a note for me, I'd be happy to follow up on that.
Thank you.
I'm just
Thank
wondering
you.
if you can speak to the expected lifespan of this equipment, the vendor that we're getting it through, do they have a timeline in our climate, do they expect it to last?
I can ask Mr. Hess to get you that information. I don't have that right off the top of my head, so I apologize.
Go ahead, Tim.
20 years?
A lot of our equipment has been around for 15 to 20 years, so. And if I looked through here, I'll see if I can find an actual, but yeah, it is long-lasting equipment. So I would expect a good 15 to 20-year lifespan out of it, so.
And that is exactly what Mr. Hess said in
Was it?
the committee, was 15 to 20 years.
Oh, perfect. I was listening there, so.
Any additional questions, comments? No, all right, we will move forward to 7G, which is Caledonia and Kettle Lake ES Furniture.
Yes, both elementary schools, we're looking at replacing some of the furniture that I guarantee you is older than 20 years in some of those buildings. And I think this is great for our kids. And I think you see the trend in chairs now, they're more, you can rock a little bit, get a little movement instead of having that static piece of steel that you're setting on. So I think that's exciting for the students. There's gonna be some upgrades to teaching stations. So those are nice things that for both buildings that they'll have. And as mentioned, this was part of the FFE, or Furniture, Fixtures and Equipment budget for the 2020 bond. And we're looking at expending $165,601 for Kettle Lake. And the building actually is contributing another $20,000 from the actual building fund to cover costs for that. At Cal-El, we're looking at $175,000, and they're able to cover $9,685 from the building funds. And we always like to add some contingency in there, because we always know when we get there, oh, we needed one more of this or one more of that, just to make the set. So we're including $5,000 for any contingency for that.
Jason?
And can you remind me, I know we've discussed the challenges of getting rid of the old furniture.
Yes,
Does
yes.
any of these, the price include cost of disposal of the old furniture or any of that? Like, where are we at with getting rid of all of those desks?
From my recollection, it's our responsibility. So I have reached out to some of our local Christian schools who we have great relationships with. If they had any need for some of it, not sure how much they would be willing to take, but generally, these aren't in demand to repurpose or to sell. So recycling is more than likely the avenue that we would go. But if a local school district partner would want something and we could help them out, we'd be happy to do that too. So.
Yeah, Jason, I think the vendor and the estimate did have a recycling line item in there, handling fee for both of those.
Was there a great?
Yeah.
You guys should have came.
I just wanted to make sure we did
Yeah.
talk about it in public as,
Yeah.
so
No, good, yeah,
other-
because-
everyone can know.
Cause I remember years ago, we had a giant garage sale at Duncan Lake Middle School. And didn't sell a lot of stuff. And so getting rid of that early is gonna be nice, or planned is needed, cause we still ended up recycling it, so.
I mean, who doesn't want a desk with all of the gum underneath of it?
Yes.
You get extra for those, that's how that works, so. All right, thank you very much, we appreciate it.
No, thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to 7H, which is our Neola final reading with Dr. Martin.
Thank you. Just wanted to quickly follow up with two things as it relates to the Neola policy that we talked about before. Okay, get a little closer, is that a little better?
That's better.
Okay. Two things I want to follow up with the Neola policy. One, it wasn't necessarily a policy change, but we wanted to just follow up with the board with discussions about the procedures and informing the nurse as it relates to the practices for use of medication. So what we have landed on is communicating with the school administration and the nurses. Two things that was listed in the memo. Basically that there is written approval from the student's physician or other healthcare provider and the student's parents or guardian to possess the inhaler, and that the building administrator should receive a copy of this in writing, and that we would give a reasonable grace period not to exceed 5 days being granted in the event that the physician's office require additional time to complete the form. So we believe that that was in the spirit of what the board kind of said they felt comfortable with. If there are some unique exceptions, then they can work with the building administrator and the nurse, but I think that gives them more flexibility than what we previously had, and so that information will be communicated to the building administrators as well as the nurses who will be overseeing that particular portion. But it didn't require the policy itself to change, just the clarification. The other thing was just a board member had inquired about the possibility of defining AI, and so as we looked into it a little bit more, and then something that I tried to communicate in the presentation, we also actually had a staff member who seems to be pretty well versed on AI, just as a newer, younger staff member who's growing up in the technology age. It was a pretty interesting presentation, but I think some of the things that the more we look into it, what's appearing to be challenging is that just AI in itself is more so of a catch-all term for multiple applications. So depending on if you want to think of something as simple as a calculator or using your phone for Google Maps, to if you're asking it for more complex things such as create a written document. And maybe what I was surprised about is there's not a whole lot of ways to, in some cases, determine if a document has been written AI, because it can be a unique document. So back in the day, there was maybe easier ways to tell if something was plagiarized, but because you can do it in AI, you can't even really determine if it was plagiarized or not in many cases. Also, I think it was interesting to note that some of our teachers are already starting to experiment with it, and I think what I took from that conversation, and maybe other board members who were there want to chime in, they feel like they need to have something in place because this thing is evolving to the point where the teacher was identifying that there are dozens of new technology or upgrades or things that's coming out like monthly, advancing at a rapid rate. So in hindsight of that conversation and looking at this policy that we were adopting, 75-40, is actually an acceptable use policy for technology. So is it acceptable for our kids to use a computer to get on the internet, so on and so forth? I didn't find a definition that I wanted to lock in yet and say that this is it, because this is evolving and it's coming out so new. But considering that this is acceptable use, I think the intent of this policy is saying that it is acceptable for our children to use AI in the various forms as long as they are given the direct consent from their teacher. So I don't think I could answer your question well enough to say what a definition of AI is. If the board or a board member feels like they have one to use, I mean, I'm open to it, but that was kind of a struggle.
Yeah, well, I think from a good policy point of view, if you can't define it, you can't manage it. If we can mention what it includes or what it excludes, that would be helpful, but I don't know, I mean, maybe we talk to our attorneys at Troon about what they're seeing or what they're defining for other institutions. But I'm very uncomfortable with broadening the scope of what this might be when we don't even know what it is, so that's just me, and I'm not saying that anyone else is right or wrong in their opinion. I just think we need to be careful.
I guess I didn't look at this policy when we read it, and I could totally be wrong in the way I understood it. So the way I looked at what we were talking about was not really broadening or expanding what this was. It was really giving our staff and our administration kind of some teeth to be able to control it more than what they can right now if we say nothing.
Correct.
So it's not about, I mean, it's there. If we say nothing about it or we don't put a policy in place that has anything to it, and there's so many things that are considered AI, from, years ago when we talk about a graphing calculator to how many different systems there are now. And you're right, some they can detect and some they can't detect as far as if a student writes a paper or running it through something. But I guess I took it as this was a way to give that leverage to our staff to be able to say, you can or can't use it, as opposed to if we say nothing, they have free reign to use whatever they want. I mean, you can't control that if you, and I realize this is all loosey-goosey, because we could list the 300 forms that are out there now, and by next week there could be another 50 to add to the list. I mean, I don't know what that is, and certainly we all know that I am not technology savvy at all. So, yeah, you can laugh over there, I know, but it's not, but I mean, so I guess that's not I didn't read the policy the same way as a form of, so I'm not sure, I don't know how anybody else.
No, I mean, I completely agree with the way you read it, and it's the way I read it too, is that we didn't have anything that said, if you generate a paper with AI, we're gonna call that plagiarism. We do now. So if you get caught using my AI from Snap or ChatGPT writing a paper for you, that is now considered plagiarism, and we have that spelled out at least. I would have concerns if we start listing things that are excluded or included, just because it changes so rapidly. I mean, there's hundreds of them now, and there's new ones coming every day. For crying out loud, they have AI to detect if AI wrote a paper now, and it still has challenges. Trying to detect those things, and has false positives and things. So it's just evolving so fast that I'm actually in favor of keeping the policy a bit more broad from a policy standpoint, and then we can use administrative guidelines, I think, to potentially narrow that down some more. But from a policy standpoint, I think leaving it broad is the right call here.
You know, one of the things that I included, I believe, I thought we included the presentation from the staff member. I can't quite remember.
Mr. Paul.
Okay. One of the things that was just kind of, as he was talking about some of the AI, I'm thinking like writing a paper. I wasn't thinking that you could take a picture, and there's an app now, and you're working on an algebra problem, it just spits out, this is the answer, this is the steps. As he was talking through it, and as he is finding some pretty creative ways to challenge his students to use it in an acceptable, reflective manner, I think it was just coming more and more clear that like whatever you think you're gonna lock in on today will probably be different next month. It's evolving that fast, and maybe the applications of what we can do with it is evolving that fast. So again, I'm not opposed to it, but it does present a unique challenge. We did check with Troom, but we did not check with Troom, but we did check with the policy writer. I imagine Troom, they write their own set of policies to see what they say, what they're looking at, but I think the general consensus is what we were finding is that it's evolving so fast. There's just a real challenge with how are you going to define it. Anything that's artificial intelligence driven, i.e. we have to be very crystal clear, and I think it's gonna take a lot of work. Do we not allow kids to use cell phones now? Because you can't buy a regular cell phone for the most part, or kids don't want it, whether it's texting that it's speak to text and it's auto-generating some of the words or correcting it for you, whether it is writing something in a Google Doc and it is auto-correcting some of the language as you speak with Grammarly. There's so many things out there that was the challenge, so to speak, that we were finding in terms of giving a good definition, because some of it is a simplistic definition would then probably say you can't use calculators or cell phones or some of the things that people are using in their daily life, and it's still part of AI. A very complex definition could be driven, but it's the applications as well as the different programs that's coming out is evolving at a rapid rate. And we're even hearing from government levels, they're really hoping people can slow things down, because they're saying where this thing can go is hard to define right now.
Well, I think because of its rapid pace, we're the only entity that can slow it down. Even the person presenting said, we don't know where this is heading and we don't have the necessary resources to catch unauthorized use. So why would we move forward with something that we can't control or we don't know what it is?
I think one way that we could look at it is just simply saying the teacher has the ability to say, you have authorization to use a form of AI to do this specific portion of your lesson. And so some of the examples is, okay, I want to have you can use AI to generate a set of pros or set of cons for this, and then you take that, bring that in, and now in class, you write the counter argument going against what this AI generated. So it's really, I think from what I was gleaning from the teachers, they're asking for, give us the autonomy to say that, yes, you can use it, no, you can't, because right now they don't have anything. It's just totally out there, and their kids are already using it. So to not have it leaves them in a vulnerable situation. Well, you don't really have a policy or anything that says I can't use it. You can't prove that this was artificially driven or not unless you make me do all of my work in front of you in the classroom, which at a high school level is going to be a logistically impossible task for them to do. So it is a unique challenge. I really wish I had better answers.
I mean, even writing papers, I mean, if you're using Google Docs to write papers and you get the little blue squiggly underlines, right, that's AI saying, hey, you have some bad grammar. So, I mean, we have to be careful if we say no AI, or we wanna draw lines somewhere, because there's AI prevalent in almost all of the apps in some way, shape, or form, to as simple as checking your grammar or any of that stuff. And Microsoft is actually moving AI into their products now too. I mean, you have to pay for it if you're Microsoft people, but so that you can just within Word generate paragraphs worth of text. Like, hey, summarize my document for me, give me an executive summary, and there it is. So I think we have to be careful if we start drawing lines in places, because then we're not allowing kids to type papers anymore. I mean, we're gonna go back to typewriters at that point. We just have to be careful is all. So, you know, leaving the discretion to the teachers, I think, is the best path forward right now.
And I think realistically, as we got the first policy, as we got this language change in the acceptable use policy, they were making it very clear that this thing is probably going to continue to evolve. The more we know, the smarter we're gonna get about it and the use of it and what's acceptable, what's not. But, you know, if the choice is use or don't use, you know, I think we need to be very clear that the kids are using it. And just talking to my kid who just graduated and the kid in college, as I'm learning about this, he's like, oh yeah, kids are using this stuff all the time. Really? Talk to me. It's out there, and even at the university level, they're trying to figure out how to work with it, because they're seeing like they can't stop it. I don't know if any other board members wanted to add in.
Brittany, go ahead.
I would only add that I agree that it's hard to draw a line around something we can't define. I agree with that. I think to me the things that we can define are that we want kids to generate their own work, right? And we can define like this is their own work versus this was artificially generated work, right? This was not their own work. So I think the goal, as we heard from Mr. Pinder earlier, and the thing that the high school administration would also find helpful is how we can continue to help them define that, right? Because right now, it's not that it's not defined, but it's that this is being left out of that definition. So we need to be able to include this in the things that are like, this is not your own work. So that gives them what they need to be able to, continue to define plagiarism, people to investigate those kinds of concerns, things like that.
So just to spin off what you're saying, would it be more appropriate to discuss the use of AI in an academic honesty policy versus a technology policy? Because I think everyone understands that we want the students to have the ability to generate their own work and not to plagiarize, but it's difficult to use a definition of plagiarism when these apps are changing continuously, but everyone understands, did you generate that or did you not? Or did you use a tool that you did not disclose that you used? As long as you're disclosing the use of a tool and the teacher is okay with it, that's way different than passing something off. But when you can't use a plagiarism checker like we traditionally have, at least having that policy, maybe it belongs under academic dishonesty as like a behavioral, I don't know. Because as far as technology use, if the teacher directs that you are allowed to use a technology and it's appropriate in the classroom versus how you're using it, that may be a better policy to update.
Yeah, I don't disagree. It's really something that we can have reflected in the handbooks, particularly at the secondary level. It's not necessarily a policy, but we do try to identify for students and for staff like what happens if a kid is plagiarizing, which is academic dishonesty.
Right.
So that's something that we could take this discussion, and I think it's probably really appropriate in both places, in all honesty. Because one is just saying that you have permission from a technical sense to use some of this. The other is saying with the direction of your teacher, and you can be very specific, AI will be, can be utilized in assignment with explicit direction from your teacher and when it's appropriate, how it can be used. And I think you can keep evolving that because it's going to continue to evolve, and that's going to be a lot easier to manage. But I think you're right, but I think it should be in both places.
I don't have a problem with the way this policy is, but I do think that you're right. I think adding that verbiage to handbooks and expectations of academic honesty would be an appropriate place to do that as well. For sure. Any other comments on that before we move forward with final reading information? Anything additional on that?
No.
Then we are going to move forward with 7I, which is foreign exchange student policy.
So this one is a new one that has come up. We shared it with the curriculum committee, I believe. Yes, okay. Essentially, we have a policy 5114 that states that if more than 5 students request to enroll in a particular sponsoring company for foreign exchange students, that we will not allow it. If in the event that we want to allow more than 5 students from an individual company, then we need to come to the board to get special permission. It's something that I think in moving forward in the future, we probably want to go back and discuss if we want to keep that number as 5, if we want to increase it, but in hearing from the high school staff in particular, there is a company and a request for a foreign exchange student to come and have a year of experience in our school system. And the high school staff is actually, they prefer that we allow this company to bring the 6th student, because this company has a good track record, better than others in some cases in terms of the process and the logistics for being successful in bringing students over and doing a good job with it. So with that, there's a request that we're asking for tonight from the board to allow administration in high school to approve a 6th student this year with one of those companies. That company is ICES, International Culture Exchange Services. In total, we have multiple companies that we use right now today. We have about 12 students that we're expecting as foreign exchange students. This past year, we had 14 students who were foreign exchange, and they all participated in our graduation ceremony. So this is something we've been doing for quite a while, but one of the companies is a little bit more preferred than the other, and that's the company that's asking for one more slot for one more student that they've identified. And the host family is awaiting the decision so this they can move forward with this process.
Any questions?
Excuse me, what was the intent of this policy? I was here when this was passed. Why would there be a limit at all recommended to the board?
The way I read the policy, it's federal. It's a federal limit of 5, so we're following federal law.
Yeah, this policy was last revised in 2009, so I'm not sure what the intent is, but he is correct, it's a.
Yeah, I understand that, I'm just trying to learn as to why the federal government would pick a number of 5 and the rationale behind it. If there's a reason that we should be talking about, but it is what it is.
That's a loaded when you say trying to figure out the rationale with the federal government. I can't answer that.
We'll just go with it is what it is on that one, so. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess at least the government allowed for board override of the 5,
There
and it's
you
not
go.
just a hard
See?
and fast 5, so
Yes,
at least we can vote and have the discussion.
and you can have multiple companies, but clearly if we have one that is more of a preferred company based on the experience for the host family and the students in the school, the receiving school, we felt like this was appropriate to bring it forward. But I do think the policy itself probably needs to be just looked into maybe a little bit deeper to see if we always have to come back and ask for permission to go above 5, or if there's some flexibility in that, and that I just don't know. This came in kind of late, and it is time sensitive.
we will add that to the list for our next review, just to see, so. All right, thank you. Any other questions on that? All right, before we go into number 8, I just want to do a quick reminder for anybody that came in, if you're here for public comment, we do ask that you fill out this card with your information on it. Please turn it in, I think, you're either at the, or back by the back door right there, and they will get it to us, so please get those filled out. At this time, we will move to 8, which is our board and superintendent reports. 8A is teaching and learning committee.
Thank you. The Teaching and Learning Committee met on Thursday, June 8 at 7:35. First, as you heard a bit about earlier, Mr. Pinder, a high school English language arts teacher, shared information about artificial intelligence as it relates to his classroom experience. And Mr. Pinder referenced research that he had come across and recent experiences he had with students in the classroom. After a short presentation, the committee engaged Mr. Pinder in his thoughts about where the future might lead us and talked a little bit through the policy as well. Dr. Trober described some of the findings from perception surveys of students in grades 3 through 12. Specifically, the committee reviewed how students feel about their depth and level of belonging. Data was discussed in terms of special populations, gender, and race, amongst other demographic representations. This is the first year that Caledonia has participated in this Kent Intermediate School District Student Perception Survey. Thus, should the district continue to utilize the survey, this would be our baseline data collection point. Dr. Diaz shared the parent perception survey results, and these findings indicate a number of things, but one thing we talked about was that as students age, caregivers tend to feel less engaged in their child's education. And so the teaching and learning department will continue to delve into these results and learn more about the data and how to respond to these learnings. Also, as you heard about tonight, Dr. Diaz and Dr. Trober reviewed the 98B data set with us, and again, as you know, required presentation, which you heard quite a bit about earlier. Ms. Dubison discussed the number of students identified for special education support and reviewed some needs that exist for special education students on a broad level. To this point, the district is attempting to put some personnel in place so that all of the needs are supported. Dr. Diaz also asked the committee to consider opening for revision of one of the current policies that restricts the amount of foreign exchange students possible per agency to accommodate a request, as again, you just heard about now. Ms. DeVries, Mr. Kingsbury, and Dr. Martin shared details about the Finance and Operations Committee. Topics such as funding sources and staffing populated the conversation. The meeting adjourned at 9:12 a.m. and our next meeting will be Thursday, July 13 at 7:30.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for that committee? All right, we are gonna move forward to 8B, which is Finance and Operations Committee.
All right, thank you. The meeting was called to order at 7:30. It began with a presentation from the bond team, Plant Ryan Cressa, Tower Pinkster, and the Crispin Construction Company, with a design and budget update for Dutton Elementary, with the price of steel going back down and the price of precast on the rise. We talked about the return to building its original plan of brick and mortar. This requires some additional design time to adjust accordingly, with site construction beginning this fall. Mr. Hess provided an update on the items moving forward for board approval this month, which include the high school learning commons furniture, the Emmons Lake playground and sensory play area, Caledonia and Kettle Lake elementary furniture, and the cafeteria tables at Caledonia and Dutton Elementary. The tables being purchased for Dutton Elementary, as mentioned, will be transportable to the new building when ready. Mr. Hess also discussed the State of Michigan Air Purifier Program and the State of Michigan Water Program. Both of these are being watched to see what this will mean for our district. Ms. DeVries presented the final June budget amendments for 2022-2023 and the proposed budget for 2023-2024. These will be part of the public hearing at this June board meeting. Also discussed was the annual school loan revolving fund estimated borrowing resolution being voted on in June. The final year renewal of the Aramark contract for 2023-2024 will be a voting item at this meeting. District will formally go through the RFP process next year for its food services for the 2024-2025 school year. Ms. DeVries finished with the 2023 bond issue authorizations being voted on again at this meeting. This will include the Series 3 bond issue, which will close out the voter-approved bonds from the May 2020 that will be used to finish the Cal Community Center project. It will also include the Series 1 bond issue from the newest voter-approved bond funds from May 2023. Mr. Kingsbury updated the committee on some technology program changes. The district is moving away from utilizing Frontline for its applicant and staff tracking over to PowerSchool. The district is also implementing Raptor Technologies for a new building safety and security check-in system. Mr. Kingsbury also updated the committee on the tentative agreement with the Caledonia Educational Support Staff Association. There are 3 more support staff groups that will be entering into negotiations starting next week. Dr. Diaz and Dr. Trober finished up with an update from the Teaching and Learning Committee meeting held the prior week, and we ended at about 9:32 a.m.
Thank you. Any questions for that committee? No? All right, 8C, I have board reports. Is there anyone that has a specific report to share? Tim?
Yeah, I just wanna bring up the email that we received from the industrial technology teacher about the possibility of receiving a grant to retrofit our old shop room to permit the use to educate kids to become electricians and mechanical engineers. I think with the demand that's out there for the trades, we can ill afford to deny that this isn't something that's gonna be around for a while. And our goal to educate every student in the district to meet their needs for moving on to the next step, that this board should seriously look further into how we can better serve our community with trades through a program here in Caledonia.
Thank you. Any additional comments or reports? All right, we are gonna move forward to 8D, which is our superintendent report.
Thank you. Not a lot to report tonight. Just wanted to one of the things that just moving forward, there was a large grant request as it relates to safety and look from a countywide perspective of having an emergency radio network put in for all the public schools. So we just recently found out through the ISD that the Kent County Sheriff Department has received the necessary equipment to start with the installation process for this. So I'm going to have them work with our tech department, and as well as Mr. Kingsbury will be kind of assisting with this process as necessary to make sure that all of our schools are equipped with the emergency radio network as needed in each of our buildings. So we're very happy to get that moving forward. The other thing, just kudos to some of our spring sports team. We had several state qualifiers in track for boys and girls, so they continue to do a good job, as well as our baseball team that became district champs went on to the regional finals. We had one of our students, Mr. Sam Baldwin, compete in the Division I golf finals last Saturday. Did very well from what I understand. So again, just finishing the year very strong across the board. My final comments is just a thank you to the Board of Education for the opportunity to lead this district, and thank you to the staff that supported me, as well as the community members. So this will be my last board meeting tonight, and I just appreciate the great work that we have been able to do. I think when you look at the overall improvement, we have a lot to be proud of in Caledonia. I will continue to be a fighting Scot in spirit and root from afar, but I just wanted to say thank you to each of the board members, each of the staff members, each of the community members that supported me, encouraged me, challenged me, all to the betterment to provide a high quality educational experience for the kids in Caledonia. So that's all I have.
Thank you. At this time, I'm gonna ask for any public comment cards to have been turned in. Nothing? We're good? Okay. All right, so we are going to move forward to our action items. We have 10A, bond authorizing resolution.
I move that the board authorize the issuance of the 2023 school building and site bonds, Series 3, general obligation unlimited tax, federally taxable, not to exceed $11,265,000, and the issuance of the 2023 school building and site bond, Series 1, general obligation unlimited tax, tax exempt, not to exceed $40 million.
Support.
Second by Tim, thank you. Any further questions on that? Could I please have roll call?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. 10B, final budget amendment resolution for 2022-23.
I move that the board adopt the proposed 2022-2023 budget amendment resolution.
May I have a second?
Support.
Second by Tim. Any further questions? May I have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 10C, budget adoption resolution 2023-24.
I move that the board adopt the proposed 2023-2024 budget resolution.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further questions on that? May I have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. 10D, food service contract renewal and meal prices.
I move that the board approve the renewal of Aramark as the district's food service provider for the 2023-2024 school year.
Second,
Second.
by Brittany. Any other questions on that?
I will be abstaining from this vote.
Okay, thank you for letting us know. May I have roll call, please?
Just not do anything, no or yes for him.
You can just write abstain next to it or just put a B next to it.
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 10E, student loan revolving fund.
I move that the board adopt the resolution to participate in the Michigan School Loan Revolving Fund.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second by Tim. Any further questions on that? Can I have a roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to 10F, high school learning commons furniture.
I move that the board approve the district to enter into a purchase agreement with DEWEL for the supply and installation of high school North Learning Commons furnishings.
Second.
Second by Tim, thank you. Any further questions? No, can I have a roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. 10G, Emmons Lake Playground and Sensory Play Area.
I move that the board approve the district to enter into a purchase agreement with Sinclair Recreation for the supply and installation of playground elements at Emmons Lake Elementary School.
Second.
Any questions on that? We have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to H, Caledonia and Kettle Lake Elementary furniture.
I move that the board approve the purchase of classroom furnishings through School Outfitters, School Specialty, and Custer Furnishings for installation at Kettle Lake and Caledonia Elementary Schools.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any further questions? Can I have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. And to I, cafeteria table purchase.
I move that the board approve the district purchase of cafeteria tables for Dutton Elementary and Caledonia Elementary Schools from School Specialty.
Second.
Any questions? And roll call, please.
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. J, Neola adoption.
May I ask that 7540.03 be voted on separately as not to taint votes on the other amendments to Neola?
Okay. Just, can you circle that one on, just circle it on the agenda. And we will add it in as an extra item below this. Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
Just 7540.03, just for clarification, okay. Cause I'm getting ready to read my favorite ones of all time. All right, I move that the board conduct a final reading and adopt immediately the following Neola policies. 0154, 5610, 5611, 2623, 6325, 8390, 8400, 7540.02, 7540.04, 8300, 8305, 8315, 9700.01, 1615, 3215, 4215, 5512, 7434, and 9160.
Second, nice job.
Any further questions on those? Can I have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. We can use the same exact language minus it'll be policy instead of policies, if you will. Does that make sense? Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm good? Okay.
I just thought I would give you a second.
We will have Neola adoption 7540.03.
I move that the board conduct a final reading and adopt immediately the following Neola policy, 7540.03.
Second.
Any further questions on that? Roll call, please.
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
No.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. We're gonna move to what is K on our list, if you will, foreign exchange student policy.
I move that the board approve allowing more than 5 exchange students to enroll through a sponsor company.
Second.
Second, thank you. Second, Brittany.
Spaced out for a
No,
second.
you're good. Any other questions on that? No, can I have roll call, please?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. On to L, superintendent resignation.
I don't wanna.
That's not an option.
Darn it. Alright, with tremendous sadness and trepidation, I will move that the board accept the resignation of Dr. Diedrich Martin.
May I have a second? I don't wanna have to take somebody out back.
Second.
Thank you. I know that there's plenty of questions and things to say, but can I please have roll call?
Reverend Garcia,
Yes.
Brandow,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Unfortunately, yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. I guess I'm gonna stop for a quick minute because obviously, certainly you can tell by voices, this is hard, so. I just wanna say, as president, I wanna just take a moment to thank you publicly for your commitment to Caledonia Community Schools over the last 5 years. What we've accomplished has been incredible, and you've certainly laid the groundwork for our interim superintendent and future superintendent to seamlessly keep us moving forward. You've prepared and empowered our administration and staff to work together for the best interest of each other, the students, and the community as a whole. All of this has been done as public education has faced challenges we couldn't have imagined. You have taken every step to meet the requests of the board that we have placed in front of you. With the expectations being high from the beginning, you took the challenges head on, pushing all of us to be better and raise the bar. We've accepted this resignation, and it's done with great gratitude, sadness, and well wishes. Kay Russa has so much to look forward to as you take the reins, and we have so much to be thankful for the position that we are in, and we wish you nothing but success moving forward. To your family, we thank them for their commitment to this community and allowing you to lead. The hours away from them and the number of things that you miss are too many to count, as you've put Caledonia Community Schools first every step of the way. We are better today because of your leadership, and today we say thank you and congratulate you on your new endeavor.
Thank you.
If you'd like to say something more, you can, but I realize you've already spoken. But if you want us to pause for a moment, we are happy to do so.
I'm not supposed to get teary-eyed, so thank you for that, Marcy.
Mm.
Again, I'm kind of speechless. If you go into education, I'd like to think that you go into it because you have a heart for kids. And sometimes doing this work is challenging, it's messy, it's emotionally draining, but it's important. Our children are our future, and so again, I just thank you guys for supporting me, working with me. I know sometimes I can be pretty pushy myself, but it comes from a good place that I truly see education as the great equalizer, the great leveler, the great springboard for so many of our students to go on and lead a fabulous life. And so it was an honor to be here to work with this great team that did a great job supporting me. Taking some of my very interesting ideas and molding it into something outstanding. I'm a little bit of a data geek, so I really truly get passionate and excited when I see us moving the ball forward. Not so much as the scores, but the reflection of the teamwork that it takes to get thousands of students to perform just a little bit better each time out. We have done some remarkable things when I look back and think of what we've accomplished in 5 years. But no one person does that alone. It is the work of the board acting as one in unison with the superintendent who has the challenge and the awesome responsibility of leading a very capable staff, supporting them and challenging them. And at every step of the way, our staff has stepped up to the challenge. I remember coming here and us talking about the math performance and talking to every principal about it. And I remember the passion, like we are going to improve our performance because we were pretty rock solid in reading. To a person, they didn't push back, they didn't reject, they stepped up. To the staff, they stepped up. I think it's just a reflection of the beginning of an even greater story in Caledonia. And I'm proud to be here at this point. I look forward to the success. I know you're going to be in great hands with Mr. Will Dreyer. I know you're going to be in great hands with the administrative team that we've assembled because they have done a lot to make me look good on many, many days. So I imagine they'll continue to do that great work. And again, I don't know what other to say than just thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. This is for you. Take with you. So with that, which is obviously a very sad moment, we also move forward now to an interim superintendent contract.
I move that the board approve the hire of Mr. Dirk Wheeldryer as interim superintendent for the 2023-2024 school year.
May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any questions about any of this? May I please have roll call? Maybe?
Barbara Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. May I? Okay, all right. I just didn't want to throw you under the bus right away, but I thought I better ask. So, Mr. Wheeldryer surprised us this evening and is gracing us here tonight. So, we are extremely excited to have him agree to take the reins for us here and come back to join us. We've upgraded our boardroom since the last time that you were here. The seat is much more comfy now, that much I can tell you. So I know that you are super busy and I appreciate you taking the time out of your night. We have fabulous things going on here. Some of these faces are very familiar to you and they are certainly happy to see you step into this role as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. It is gonna be great. I'm very much looking forward to working with the new people here, but also with many old friends. So it'll be a great time.
Thank you very much. All right, at this time, can we take like 5 in case there's, okay. We're gonna take like just a quick 5-minute break, but at this point in time, because I think there's a few people that had came to say a thank you to Dr. Martin and such. So we are gonna be moving into closed session and we do have our topic to discuss. We do not have a proposed motion when we come out, so I'm not expecting a motion at this point. Certainly, for you, Greg, or whatever, we can follow up with you if there is something to change on that. But yeah, the cameras will stay on in here. I cannot tell you how long we will be in closed session, but we do not have an intended motion on the agenda when we come back out. But thank you all for coming. At this point in time, we will take just a few minutes to break before we make a motion to go into closed session. Okay, all right, good, thank you. Here. All right, at this point in time, we are gonna move to 11, which is closed session. 11A, land purchase consideration.
I move that the board meet in closed session as per Michigan School Law 15.268D for the purpose of potential land purchase.
Second. Can I have a roll call, please?
Barbara Garcia,
Yes.
Brandau,
Yes.
Isich, yes, Morris,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Sadoo,
Yes.
White.
Yes, motion carries. We are now in closed session.
You there, I'm talking.
All right, we are coming out of closed session at 8:57. I just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good night. Thank you, everybody.
You.
You don't have to go home, but you gotta get out of here.